Greetings to each and every one. Welcome again to another episode of the Cool Game Podcast. It's all about the coolest game in the world, the Great Canadian Ice Hockey Game, alongside the coolest music in the world, the great reggae music. And do remember, the Cool Game Podcast is brought to you by the Reggae Planet Spotlight. Right about now, we're talking about Road to the Stanley Cup 2022. It's all about the Battle of Alberta. Recapping Road to the Stanley Cup 2022 Round 2, Battle of Alberta, featuring Edmonton Oilers against the Calgary Flames. It was a very exciting edition of the Battle of Alberta in this year's Stanley Cup playoffs. The Edmonton Oilers went up against the Calgary Flames. The series started in Calgary. The first game was a big high-scoring game. Calgary won the first game 9-6. And Calgary had the Oilers on the ropes early in the game. They were leading at one point, I believe, 6-2. But the Oilers came back and tied the game before the Calgary Flames pulled away and won the game. 9-6 was the final score. So game 1 was a big victory for Calgary. But still, even though the Oilers lost game 1, the way they battled back and scored 6 goals, it proved that Edmonton still had their scoring touch, so they just had to tighten up the defense. In that game 1, the Edmonton Oilers rekindled their confidence. They got their swagger and their mojo going. And they got a taste of what it feels like to score many goals against Calgary in the playoffs. So by game 2, Edmonton was ready to rumble and the stars came out to shine. McDavid, Draisaitl, Kane and Hyman and the entire Edmonton team was ready to battle to win. You could sense the determination to go for victory because last year they were knocked out of the first round 4 games in a row. So the Edmonton Oilers had a bit of vengeance in their system and they had a point to prove. And they started to score and control the game and played better defense. And they won game 2, 5-3. So now after the Oilers game 2 victory, the series was now tied at 1 game apiece. Yes indeed. And Edmonton never looked back after that. They won the next 3 games in a row. So they won 4 games in a row and they finished the series in 5 games. In game 3, they won 4-1. And in game 4, they won 5-2. After 4 games, Edmonton was now leading the series 3-1. And they just needed one more victory in one more game to seal the contest and to win the Battle of Alberta. And to move on to round 3, Road to the Stanley Cup 2022 Western Conference Finals. Yes, indeed. So now it all came down to game 5. It was an elimination game for Calgary. That means if Calgary lose game 5, they get eliminated. So if Edmonton could win game 5, Calgary would be knocked out of the playoffs. And Edmonton would go on to the Western Conference Finals. So everyone was waiting to see, can Edmonton close it out? Can they actually finish off the Calgary Flames and win the Battle of Alberta 2022 edition? And Game 5 turned out to be a very exciting game, going all the way to overtime. And the Edmonton Oilers won it 5-4 with the great Connor McDavid scoring the winning overtime goal, assisted by Leon Draisaitl, yes indeed, knocking out the Calgary Flames and winning the victory in the Battle of Alberta 2022 edition. Road to the Stanley Cup. And they're setting lots of records out there in Edmonton. They're doing very well. The top players are playing like superstars. Leon Draisaitl has scored 26 points in this year's playoffs. And also, McDavid has scored 26 points in this year's playoffs. Evander Kane is also doing good. He has scored the most goals in this year's playoff, 12 goals and 3 assists For a total of 15 points in this year's NHL playoffs. He is the leading goal scorer. 2022 Road to the Stanley Cup Cool Game Podcast. Also, Zach Hyman, the former Toronto Maple Leafs, is now doing very well in Edmonton. And I'm thinking, he must be thinking, yeah, I made the right move in the offseason. Because in the offseason, he signed with the Edmonton Oilers. And now, he is going to the conference finals. Road to the Stanley Cup 2022. Zach Hyman is having a great playoff so far. He has scored 8 goals. Yes, indeed. In this series alone, he scored 6 goals. Yes? So he's doing really good out there in Edmonton. This year's edition of the Battle of Alberta was very exciting indeed. The last such showdown was in 1991 Stanley Cup playoffs, 3 decades ago, 31 years ago. Can you imagine? So the people were very excited to see a new edition of the great rivalry known as the Battle of Alberta, featuring the city of Edmonton going up against the city of Calgary in the province of Alberta, Canada. So you see, Edmonton and Calgary are close neighbors but big rivals, because they're always competing to be the best in the West. But now the Oilers are not just going for best in the West, they're going after a bigger title. They want to be best in the East, West, North, and South. Do remember that the Edmonton Oilers are famous in Stanley Cup history. Back in the days, in the 1980s, the Edmonton Oilers won a total of 5 Stanley Cups. They won their first 2 Stanley Cups in 1984 and 1985, 2 in a row. And then they won 2 in a row again in 1987 and 1988. They also won again in 1990. So overall, they won 5 Stanley Cups in a short span of 7 years. Yes, indeed, the great Wayne Gretzky was on those teams. He won 4 Stanley Cups with them before being traded to the LA Kings. But Mark Messier stayed with the team and he won the 5th Stanley Cup with them. He also won another Stanley Cup with the New York Rangers. Yes, indeed. So the Edmonton Oilers of the 1980s, featuring Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, Glenn Anderson, Yari Corey, Paul Coffey, and Grant Fuhr, that great Edmonton Oilers team of the 1980s. That great team is indeed a Stanley Cup juggernaut, one of the greatest Stanley Cup championships teams in all of NHL playoffs history. The New York Islanders was also a great Stanley Cup team. They won the Stanley Cup 4 years in a row. They won in 1980. They also won in 1981. They also won in 1982 and in 1983. Yes, indeed, for a total of 4 Stanley Cups in a row. The record is 5 Stanley Cups in a row, set in the 1950s by the great Montreal Canadiens. The Montreal Canadiens of the 1970s was also a great Stanley Cup juggernaut. They won 4 Stanley Cups in a row. And now recently, in the last 2 years, the Tampa Bay Lightning has won 2 Stanley Cups in a row. They won in 2020 and they also won in 2021. And now they're trying to go for 3 Stanley Cups in a row. They want to join the likes of the Toronto Maple Leafs from back in the days, who won 3 Stanley Cups in a row, and the Montreal Canadiens, who won 4 and 5 Stanley Cups in a row, and the great New York Islanders, who also won 4 Stanley Cups in a row. Yes, indeed. So right about now, we're continuing this Cool Game Podcast, all about the Battle of Alberta. The Edmonton Oilers has won their 2nd round. They have secured the victory to go on to the 3rd round to face the Colorado Avalanche in the Western Conference Finals. Road to the Stanley Cup 2022. Right now they're setting major records. Leon Draisaitl scored 17 points in 5 games. 17 points in this second round of the playoffs. And only 2 players in NHL history have scored more points in one playoff series. Way back in the 1980s, Rick Middleton of the Boston Bruins, he scored 19 points in one playoff series. And as you know, the great Wayne Gretzky is always showing up in the record books. He scored 18 points in one playoff series. And the magnificent Mario Lemieux also scored 17 points in one playoff series. And now Leon Draisaitl is on that great list of playoff performers, top playoff performers. So that's what it's all about. It's all about performing strong. They always say that to win the Stanley Cup, your best players have to be your best players. They can't be complaining and saying, oh man, the playoff checking is too tight and we couldn't get it done. They just got to find a way and rise to the next level and get it done. And I believe that's what the Edmonton Oilers showed in this series. They showed that willpower, that drive, that intangible ability to really rise above the odds and rise above, the adversaries. Yeah, they have to rise above the adversaries and keep going. So right now, Edmonton is looking good. The general manager, Ken Holland, did a great job because when Ken Holland decided to sign Evander Kane, a lot of people was thinking Ken Holland is crazy and saying, why is he giving this guy another chance? But he saw something, and I also believe that Ken Holland is confident in himself to know that he knows what to say. He knows how to get respect, you know what I mean? And he knows how to bring that vibe in the room. Also, Connor McDavid wanted Evander Kane on the team, and it has worked out very well for them. So let's see what happens next. Right about now, we all are looking forward to the big excitement coming up in the third round of this year's Stanley Cup playoffs. The Edmonton Oilers will be battling against the Colorado Avalanche in the Western Conference Finals. Road to the Stanley Cup 2022. Once again, this is the Cool Game Podcast, brought to you by the Reggae Planet Spotlight. And we're shining the spotlight bright on the coolest game in the world, the Great Canadian Ice Hockey Game, yes indeed. And we're bigging up the greatest music, the coolest music in the world, the Great Reggae Planet music. Tune in again next time, and we will continue the story. We're gonna keep the spotlight shining bright. And we'd also like to say big respect going out to the Calgary Flames. Big respect going out to their great coach, Daryl Sutter. And also big respect going out to their leading scorer, Johnny Gaudreau and Mangiapane. Calgary Flames is a great team, and we're looking forward to seeing them competing again next year. Who knows? Maybe next year they can go further in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But everyone right now is excited to see can McDavid pull it off. He's the greatest hockey player of our generation. Can he go all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals? This is what everybody's waiting to see. We're also waiting to see if the Tampa Bay Lightning can pull through. They're trying to go for 3 Stanley Cups in a row. Let's see what happens. That's why they play the games. Once again, thank you for tuning in to the Cool Game Podcast. Reggae Planet Spotlight shining bright. Cool Game Podcast. Road to the Stanley Cup 2022. Tune in again next time, and we'll continue the story.